Thanks everyone for coming. Thanks Robert for the introduction, and thanks to Photo Shelter, Canon, and the Photo Brigade. I've actually been a Canon user since 1982. I never was one of those frauds that went back and forth looking for free gear, like a lot of people. I just stuck with Canon, therefore I never got any free gear. I just have to keep paying for it over and over. I'm a baseball freak, and that's pretty much all I do now. And way back in 2009, my good friend Robert Seal and I went to Cooperstown, New York, to the Baseball Hall of Fame. We were invited to give a couple of presentations on baseball photography, and one that I put together was the history of baseball photography. And it was a pretty small show with the help of Pat Kelly, who was in charge of the photo library there at the time, and Karen Carpenter from SI Picture Sales, and some other folks helped me gather some pictures, and I put together kind of a small collection to kind of do a historical timeline of how baseball photography has evolved. And over the time, I've kept adding. It's become this like bizarre, obsessive project of mine. I gave the show again in Cooperstown last year. It had gotten way bigger, and I'm giving it again this coming Friday at the Hall of Fame. So I'm really excited to be able to give it here tonight, because no one's ever really seen it unless you are one of the small group who was in the museum when I've been there. I'm up to right around 42 photographers I think you're going to see tonight that I've gathered together with the help of a lot of people, because I think it's important for folks young and old to realize that, you know, what we do now when we go out and shoot with autofocus, auto exposure, digital cameras, and, you know, I'll just be honest, it's so damn easy compared to what a lot of folks had to do in the old days with manual focus and 4x5 and shooting from the field, or upstairs with these big Bertha cameras where you're just notch focusing on bases and getting one frame. And a lot of these photographers back in the day, no one knows their names, they never get any recognition, and people just don't have a clue of what was involved in making baseball pictures back in the day. So it's kind of my goal to shine a light on these photographers and get them some recognition, and just kind of open everyone's eyes to what's out there, and including some of the big time editorial names that a lot of us know, to kind of expose you to names of photographers that most of us have never heard of, but that did a great job of documenting the game of baseball over the last 100 plus years. So this is the first guy we really have documented. Joseph Hall, he was a studio photographer in Brooklyn, and this is his business card. And in 1888, he did team pictures when teams would come to town. Beautiful, beautiful cabinet cards, team pictures that he would shoot in New York. So this is the Giants. This is in the studio. And then this is the Louisville Club, shot on location. And this is like some of the earliest recorded baseball photography that we have that's attributed to a name of a photographer that we can pinpoint. This is an individual portrait that he did of a ball player, 1891. The next big photographer that most of you probably never heard of, but you've seen some of his pictures, is Carl Horner, who had a portrait studio in Boston in the early 1900s. And his work is stunning. And it ends up that a lot of his pictures were on the early tobacco baseball cards, which in the technical terms are the T206 cards, which the most famous one is the Honus Wagner. He shot the portrait of Honus Wagner. This is an original print, and this portrait by Carl Horner is on the most expensive card available today that goes for auction for huge sums of money. So Carl Horner was an amazing, trailblazing baseball photographer. He didn't shoot action, he shot portraits. He did it really well, and his work is just beautiful. The name that most people relate to baseball photography and people consider like the real grandfather of baseball photography is Charles Conlan, who worked in New York on his spare time, and all his work ended up going to the Sporting News. This is Christy Mathewson. Conlan did portraits in the first several decades of the 20th century, and his work is just stunning. This is the first action picture. Ty Cobb sliding into third. And this, I always screw this up. It's 1909 or 1910. And this is Conlan. And it's the original frame. This is 4x5. The original frame is looser, but it's pretty incredible.
Brad, where is he shooting this?
He's at third base on the field. So that's Cobb sliding to third. You see the right field corners in the background. You can see the grandstand. This is, I think this is at Hilltop Park where the Yankees played when they were the Highlanders, I believe. A lot of these pictures that you'll see tonight are shot in New York because that's where a lot of the media was, and that's kind of the baseball capital of the world in the first half of the century. Connie Mack, the longtime manager of the Philadelphia Athletics. Quality is amazing, his work. Johnny Evers of the famous Tinkers to Evers to Chance double play combination of the Cubs. Look how thick that bat handle is. If you've ever swung a bat, you've never swung a bat with a handle that thick. Jim Thorpe, who won all the gold medals in the 1912 Olympics that were later stripped from him, played pro baseball for the Giants and here for the Reds. Miller Huggins managed the Yankees. These are all Conlan. Very famous Babe Ruth portrait by Charles Conlan. Mel Ott by Charles Conlan. Now we're into the early 30s, towards the end of Conlan's run. This next set of pictures is from the George Bain collection. George Bain had a news service here in New York in the first few decades of the century. And all his pictures are available online through the Library of Congress, I believe. And this is a sample of, these are photographers at the Polo Grounds around 1913 or 1914. And you can see the cameras that they used at the time and how they were dressed. That's opening day. You can tell because of the bunting in the background. And then the captions are etched into the glass plate negative, so that's always nice. This is Roger Bresnahan catching for the Giants. He's the guy that invented catcher's gear and the catcher's mask in 1908 against the Pirates. This is the old Polo Grounds that burned down. You could tell because it's wooden and it has the Y beams. There's later pictures where it's concrete and it has the decorative concrete designs on it. A lot of pictures from the Polo Grounds, which was up 161st in Harlem. This is the Polo Grounds. You can see the Game 4 of the 1912 World Series. This is after the wooden one burned down. And it's cool because, like when I started out shooting pictures in photojournalism school in the 1980s, everything was long lens, tight, make an action picture. You know, you never shot wide. You were never taught to shoot wide. And I was never taught to shoot wide until I started working for Sports Illustrated over 20 years ago. And, you know, it gives you the whole sense of place, sense of history, sense of time. And, you know, thank God these photographers shot beautiful pictures like this so you can see what the place looked like. It's pretty cool. Smokey Joe Wood, great pitcher for the Red Sox. Right around that time, 1912, 1913. The Yankees, you can see, April 4th, 1913. And here we have the Giants on April 10th, 1913. They're at the Polo Grounds. It's probably opening day. And they're all posing in their home pinstripe unis. This is one of my favorite pictures. Talk about the whole sense of place, sense of time, sense of history thing. And this, the Polo Grounds was under Coogan's Bluff. It's the bluff behind home plate. Gives you a sense of the neighborhood, the ballpark, the fans, the top hats, the collars, the whole thing. I just love this picture. And I think it's pretty cool. Kid Gleason, Chicago White Sox manager. If you remember the movie 8 Men Out, he was the manager during the Black Sox scandal. And this is him just hitting fungos. That, I'm not sure where that is. That could be, that might be at Hilltop Park or Fenway. And I love this. Giants taking batting practice at the Polo Grounds. And look at the guys, you know, the batting cage is obviously very archaic and different than today. But look at the guys hanging on the cage, leaning on their bats. And that could be before tonight's Cardinals-Mets game at Citi Field. I mean, it's just, it's baseball. God, I love that. It's the same game. Our next photographer, Louis Van Ooyen. This is his pass from the Cleveland Ball Club, the Cleveland Indians, 1914. He shot in Cleveland, and he ended up being the official photographer for the American League for a number of years. This is a picture of his of Joe Jackson, front and back of the print. Joe Jackson played for the Indians around 1914, 1915, before he went to the Chicago White Sox. This is a picture of his of Babe Ruth in Cleveland with some kids. Opening day, Cleveland, 1930. Famous portrait of Lou Gehrig by Louis Van Ooyen. There's a few pictures in this show that are super well known, that have been seen and published a million times, that nobody knows who shot. And this is one of them. Very famous Hannes Wagner picture. This just incredible quality, beautiful picture. And no one at the Hall of Fame knows who shot it. No one knows who shot this picture. And it's one of the few special pictures out there. It's really a shame. Most everything I'm showing you tonight, with the exception of the Bain collection, is attributed to somebody. This is another one. We don't know who shot this, but it's incredibly rare because it's a photographer on the field, low angle, behind home plate, Yankee Stadium in the late 20s, and Babe Ruth is pitching. And I'd never seen this picture till I got it from the Hall of Fame. And, you know, you gotta love the betting is prohibited. The old courthouse building in center field, it's still there. And I just think this is a wonderful picture. And then there's this picture of Mickey Cochran, great catcher, making a tag play at the plate. This was on the cover of the Ken Burns original box set. They used this when they came out with their first baseball film series in 1994. Great picture, insane picture from a photographer on the field shooting 4x5. We don't know who shot it. Lou Gehrig's farewell address, July 4th, 1939. We do not know who shot this one. And another unknown photographer of just a wonderful picture. As a photographer, you might think, oh God, I got to shoot a team picture. The guy's in front of the bus. But look at that. The Pittsburgh Crawfords, 1935. That's a great picture. You know, you forget so many times. I mean, I did it when I was young. You shoot pictures and you don't realize the history years from now that those pictures will evoke, that sense of time, sense of place, sense of history, and that you're documenting history at the time, and you really are. I like this picture. This is pretty amazing. This is George Burke, who was a long-time well-known photographer in Chicago, who would shoot at both Wrigley Field and Comiskey, the Cubs and Sox, depending on who was in town. Shot there forever. This is the ivy being planted at Wrigley Field, because the ivy wasn't always there. And look at this portrait. And one of the things, I'm a ballpark freak and a picture freak, and there's certain ballparks where all the pictures were shot at. And there's a ton of stuff that was shot at Old Comiskey, where the White Sox played. And you can tell because of the archways in the background. And you'll see those in a ton of pictures. There were a ton of Negro League games played at Old Comiskey, so you see those archways in the background, a ton of Negro League pictures. And you see it in a lot of pictures coming up here. But just beautiful quality, beautiful portrait before a game. Lou Gehrig taking batting practice, Old Comiskey. This is by George Burke. Love this. Wrigley, Leo DeRocher. And this kid is just right out of Central Casting. I mean, look at him. Look at that kid. That's a beautiful picture that I've never seen before. I've never seen that published anywhere. It's just fabulous. Our next guy is a new discovery. His name is Forrest Yantis. And I found out about him in the Baseball Hall of Fame has a magazine that comes out every couple of months. And Keith Olbermann, the television broadcaster, is a baseball freak. He actually used to be a photographer and shot really bad pictures for the first Donruss set of baseball cards in 1981. And they're really bad. And he donated this collection of the Forrest Yantis pictures. This is Forrest Yantis. He was an insurance salesman in Cleveland. And he would go to games and shoot pictures for guys, for postcards, for private use, which is type of stuff that went on back in the day. And his pictures, no one ever saw them, really. They never ran editorially. And they're these just wonderful gems. This is Red Ruffing, great Yankee pitcher during the 30s. Bill Terry, great New York Giant. And this is Forrest's office, his insurance office in Cleveland, with all his portraits. I just think that's really cool. Beautiful work. The guy documented the game. No one ever saw his work, but now it's being preserved in the Baseball Hall of Fame, and a lot of it's been displayed there. And I'd never heard of the guy until a few months ago. I think it's pretty neat stuff. Here's another guy. I guarantee you, no one here has ever heard of Leslie Jones. He shot for the Boston Herald Traveler. And his family had all his film and donated it to the Boston Public Library a few years back. And the Boston Public Library has made all these images available to the public to download. And this guy, he shot the Red Sox and the Boston Braves, because the Braves played in Boston before they moved to Milwaukee. And he's got some great stuff. This is 1929, Red Sox clubhouse. We'll have some comparisons by Michael Zagaris later, where you can see what clubhouses look like in the later days. Play at first base, Fenway Park, when the Green Monster had ads on it. Again, this is when photographers were on the field. Just a detail of look at what the bases used to be like. And you'd never know that if he didn't shoot this detail. How many editors have yelled at us as young photographers to always shoot details? This is just cool as hell. This is a play at the plate at Braves Field, where the Boston Braves played. This is a game between the Braves and the Cardinals. This is beautiful. When back in the days when I was in school, you get yelled at because you're supposed to shoot tight. But then as I learned, this would make what an opening spread in a magazine or something. Drop in, the whole. This is just, you want this to be loose because you want to see Braves Field and the whole surroundings, and it's just. Yeah, it's awesome. It's just awesome. Joe D, Fenway Park. Old Fenway, when it was just a single deck. And Teddy Ballgame taking BP on opening day because you see the bunting. And it couldn't have been the World Series unless it was 1948. The chances of that are pretty slim. So, Yeah, I'm gonna say opening day. And he shot this, the photographer shooting Ted before a game. Old Fenway. I love this. Kids outside opening day right around 1950. Nate, are you in this picture? Yeah. A great New York photographer that I discovered a while ago, William C. Green, shot for the New York World Telegram. His pictures are everywhere. He covered the hell out of baseball. It appears in the 30s, 40s, 50s. This is Red Ruffing's four-seam fastball grip. And just beautiful detail. Famous picture, Jackie Robinson, when he basically got notified that he got called up that he's going to become a Dodger in 1947. And Eddie Waitkus, Baltimore Orioles. Shot at Yankee Stadium, I believe. This is opening day in Philly in 1950. I still don't understand why they're all on ladders and really high on ladders. But look at look at all the photographers. Look at their overcoats. You know, it's early to mid April day in Philadelphia. Looks like it's kind of cold. It's just crazy. And this is how it was. Photographers on the field. They get their one frame. This is around 1960. This is Cleveland Municipal Stadium, the Mistake by the Lake, the big, empty, gigantic place where the Indians played for a long time and the Browns. And these are the big Berthas, the Graflex cameras that guys used from overhead, that they would have levers and they would swing them to first base, second base, third base, and they'd have notches, you know, that would adjust the focus depending on where they were going. This is the 1961 World Series in Cincinnati. This was the Yankees and the Reds. And this is a photographer juggling all his gear. And this is a photographer who passed away a couple years ago, but came to Cooperstown to meet us in 2009, Ron Kuntz from the UPI in Cleveland. He was a wonderful guy who shot there forever. And this is him with a speed graphic and the equipment of the day. And I love this. This is him on the field in his nice shoes, nice slacks, white shirt, speed graphic, shooting a play at third in Cleveland. Okay, so remember, visualize this in your head. And now here is the picture he made. How cool is that? Go back. It's like, look at the umpire. Just love that. So great. This is a picture of his. Direct flash, nighttime home plate action. I love that. You get that early in the game, you're pretty excited. You can go upstairs and move that one. Our next photographer is a wonderful later discovery who had an exhibit in Cooperstown last year that we went to see named Osvaldo Salas. Salas was a Cuban photographer who had a studio here in Manhattan across from the old Madison Square Garden in Midtown in the 50s with his son Roberto, who was a teenager. And Osvaldo shot for Cuban newspapers and covered sports, covered boxing at the Garden, covered a lot of baseball in New York. And his pictures were lost for a long time. Some collectors found this stuff, and a lot of it was donated to Cooperstown last year. And an exhibit was made of his work. And phenomenal pictures that have never been seen. And eventually, when the revolution happened, Salas had photographed Castro many times in his studio here in Manhattan when Castro was in town in the mid-50s doing fundraising for the revolution. And Salas and his son ended up going back to Cuba and being like Castro's official photographers for years. But this is Louis Aparicio, the White Sox. Just a wonderful portrait of him. Bobby Thompson, the day after he hit the shot heard around the world, this is the very next day was Game 1 of the 51 World Series against the Yankees. So they were the road team. Game 1 was at Yankee Stadium, and look at all the newsreel guys filming, because the newsreels, they would always film the down-low picture of a guy at bat with the sky in the background that they would mix in before they do the wide shot of the actual swing. Willie Mays, 1954 World Series at the Polo Grounds. The Giants swept the Indians in the first 2 games at the Polo Grounds, so this is before Game 1 or Game 2. And this is just spectacular. A very young Ernie Banks at the Polo Grounds. Very, very young, mid-50s. And it's always fun when you can find pictures. We see the same pictures over and over and over of certain of the stars. And when you can see pictures of some of these guys that no one's ever seen before, it's a real thrill. Roberto Clemente at the Polo Grounds. That's a young, young Roberto. Frank Robinson, late 50s, young Frank. Our next photographer is a guy that very few people have probably ever heard of, who was a Washington, D.C. photographer who did a lot of postcard work and work for the Washington Senators and for the Topps Chewing Gum Company, and that's Don Wingfield. And he did some amazing work that I found. This is his portrait of Mickey Mantle. This is Harmon Killebrew for the Washington Senators. This is its obviously spring training. And Maury Wills, love this. These are pictures that I had never seen before. Okay, who knows who this guy is?
Sandy Koufax.
God, no.
Oh, Walter Johnson.
This is Claude Osteen, better known as a Los Angeles Dodger. He has a very distinctive face. This is a crazy great picture. Shot at the Senators' old ballpark. Love this picture. And it's, there's pictures like that, like this, just really, they don't seem like much at the time, but it's, they're really preserving history. Hy Peskin, one of the SI legends. 1955 World Series, Yankee Stadium. The classic, the bunting, the men in the white shirts, the ties, the whole thing. Pretty great. Another just incredible Hy Peskin picture. I keep going back to the wide sense of place, sense of history. I've never seen a picture of the Polo Grounds like this. And I remember Walter Yost used to always talk about how night games look more dramatic when you shoot wide, just with the dark sky and the lights, and especially depending on the design of the stadium and how the lights are, and the perspective and the composition. And, just with the bat boy and the on-deck guy in the foreground and the lines and just the Polo Grounds, it's just, gotta love this picture. And it shows you what the Polo Grounds look like, because chances are none of us have ever been there. Fabulous Ted Williams, on-deck circle, Fenway Park. This was an SI cover by Hy Peskin. There's a lot of versions of the Willie Mays catch on the Vic Wertz drive in Game 1 of the 54 World Series. But this is the best one. This is by Frank Hurley of the New York Daily News. He used a Hulter camera, 70mm film, 100-foot rolls, 600mm lens from way up high. And that's a long ways away.
And this is an incredible frame. You can really see all the people. You can see someone peeking through the clubhouse window. It's incredible. Great, great frame. Mark Kaufman, legendary SI Life magazine photographer, the famous Jackie Robinson stealing home, World Series, Yankee Stadium. This is one of the first ever popular, well-published, ground-level action pictures. Slowly you start seeing some more guys shooting on the ground with 35 millimeter equipment. And because for a long time, eventually photographers got kicked off the field, guys are still shooting overhead, and you're not seeing this. George Silk, legendary life photographer. This is spring training. I love this. This is after Don Larson's perfect game. Yankee Stadium, October 1956. And look at all the speed graphics. George Silk. This is the famous George Silk picture. Game 7, 1960 World Series. Yankees Pirates, Forbes Field. That's from the University of Pittsburgh, the tower. Many people say it was set up. It's a hell of a frame. It's a beautiful picture. And the great Marvin Newman picture of the Mazeroski walk-off home run to win Game 7 in the bottom of the ninth to beat the Yankees in 1960. And this was when I worked, I did baseball with Nate Gordon. Where's Nate? Raise your hand, Nate. Nate was a baseball editor at SI for a bazillion years, and I did a lot of baseball for him. And this was a picture that, it was the first picture I've ever seen chronologically that covered the story-wide swing ball scoreboard, sense of place. And it's Marvin Newman, he's not in a photo position, he's like in an aisle with fans about to go crazy. And this was my inspiration for how we covered bonds on certain things. And this is a hell of a picture by Marvin Newman. There's not a lot of color Willie Mays from back in the day because people didn't shoot color. But this is by the great John Zimmerman, legendary SI photographer. Sandy Koufax by Zimmerman. Beautiful night color, rare back in the day. And next we have a great New York photographer who did a lot of post stuff, Louis Requena, and his collection was acquired by MLB several years ago. And he did 2 1/4 post stuff at both Yankee Stadium and Shea Stadium. And the stuff is very simple, not very exciting, not very fancy lighting, but the fact that he was there and he did it on chrome in color when basically nobody else did means that it's cool. And just, the fact of just showing up and being there and doing it when no one else is a big deal. So he did Clemente. I mean, this picture of Mickey Mantle that he shot, there's not a lot of color of Mickey Mantle out there. And so this picture gets used a lot. The great Ozzie Sweet. He was just a legend in the 50s for Sport Magazine. He had a certain style, certain look about his work. And he did a whole book on Mickey Mantle years ago. I mean, he just covered the hell out of Mantle and the Yankees and everyone else of that era. This is one of his great Mantle portraits. Great young Frank Robinson by Ozzie. And Clemente by Ozzie Sweet. And next up is an old friend of mine and a lot of ours, one of the few remaining photographers who photographed all of the Super Bowls, Mickey Palmer. And Mickey shot this of Roberto Clemente at Forbes Field in the 60s. Clemente at bat. And this, I mean, Mickey Mantle in color, mirror lens, Yankee Stadium, swinging the bat like as sharp as it's going to be with the equipment back in the day. You know, you can count on two hands the number of original slides that exist like this, probably. It just doesn't happen. And because it was expensive, it was a pain in the ass, because people didn't do it. And Mickey did. And it's pretty cool. I love this picture that Mickey shot. I could just see Mickey on the field. If you know Mickey, you could see Mickey running out on the field. God knows what Mantle did. And I love the guy in the blue sport coat in the dugout. But Mantle just did something. And I'd never seen this picture before until Mickey sent it to me. And then this is Mickey sent me this. It's Willie Mays pose before a World Series game in 1962 series between the Giants and Yankees at Yankee Stadium. The great Walter Yost, one of my all-time favorite pictures of his. Shibe Park in Philadelphia. Wonderful Hank Aaron from 73-ish, 72, 73. It's that era uniform. Reggie. Same Yankee Stadium, similar mirror lens, but better quality. Same photo position. And now we have Neil. This is Neil, 1962. Comiskey Park. Classic Neil. Love this one. I have to read the caption in this one.
Is that a curse?
Here's the caption. Portrait of photographer Neil Leifer using camera with 4,000 millimeter lens while standing on station wagon during New York Mets versus San Francisco Giants game at Shea Stadium, Flushing, New York, May 31st, 1964. How great is that? You know, and Neil is you know, he's 24 there, roughly. 24 years old there. Crazy. We're back to the Polo Grounds with another wide picture, but it's completely different. Still got the sense of place, sense of history, but now it's old, broken down. The Giants have left. The Mets are playing there. This is 1963, the last year of the Polo Grounds. The seats are a mess. Kids are out in the bleachers. The neighborhood has gone to hell. And Neil shot it, and it's just, I love this picture. And then we got Willie Davis sliding into second base in 1965 at Dodger Stadium. Neil has a camera inside second base. Just think about that. You know, there's no pocket wizards. There's no quantum radio slaves. There's no, you know, that's a hardwire. And it's crazy. And Dodger Stadium still looks the same today, basically. It's pretty amazing. Wonderful at-bat portrait of Hank Aaron at Dodger Stadium. It was a cover a few years back. Love this. Back in the day when they would wear their hats under their helmet. Just it's no big deal, but it just kind of gives you a sense of time and history and the way things were. I love that. And Neil portrait of Casey. Anyone know who this guy is?
Herb Sharpman.
Yes, the great Herbie Sharpman. Herbie did incredible work for SI and a lot of people and the Los Angeles Dodgers. And this is him with Sandy Koufax pulling a baseball out of his ear. I never met Herbie, but his pictures are just incredible. This is when Maris was going after Ruth's home run record in 1961. last week or so of the season when he was right up to it. They played in Baltimore, and the pressure was getting to him because people said he had to break the record in 154 games instead of the 162, and this was right up to the 154, so there was pressure on him to hit the home runs before they left Baltimore. And this was after a game, and pretty good access, I'd say. And then this is one of my all-time favorite pictures. Mantle was hurt. Mantle was right there with them during the summer, neck and neck, and then he got hurt. So he's there supporting him. And look at that picture. This is an incredible picture. I just can't get enough of this frame. Look at those smiles. Look how young and innocent and friends. They were good friends. This is awesome. This is opening day 1962, the first ever Mets game at home at the Polo Grounds. Casey and Danny Murtaugh. It's a couple of old baseball guys. Those old jackets and just awesome. Herb Sharpman. Sandy after a game, looking at Herb. Walt Alston, the great Dodger manager, after a game. And young Pete Rose. Young Pete Rose. Willie Mays coming out of one of the clubhouse tunnel doors at Candlestick. This is John Dominus, Life magazine, one of the most famous pictures of Mantle ever. He was going through a bad slump. He'd struck out, throwing his helmet. This is an incredible picture. Tony Tomsick, good friend of a lot of ours from Cleveland, sent me a few pictures about 6 months ago from Cleveland. Mickey Mantle, this is Chrome, a Mantle dropping a bunt. Rocky Colavito in Cleveland by Tony Tomsick, late 60s. And a more recent picture from the 90s, Ken Griffey Jr. sliding home in Cleveland by Tony Tomsick. This is by a friend of mine who worked at the Oakland Tribune for a long, long time, named Ronnie Reister, who's one of the deans of Bay Area sports photography going back when pro baseball came to the Bay Area. This is Catfish Hunter threw a perfect game against the Twins in April of 1968 at the Oakland Coliseum, and Ronnie was there. And after the game, they didn't even have traditional buckets to put ice water in, so it's like I don't even know what that is. It's a thing that Catfish has his arm in, and it's just a very young Catfish Hunter, very innocent. Very famous set of pictures by Ronnie. And this is the A's after they won their first of 3 World Series in a row. 1972, Game 7, Cincinnati. Can anyone name those guys? Well, that's easy.
Yeah.
On the right is Sal Bando. Next to him is Joe Rudy. Then there's Dave Duncan without his shirt on. And the guy on the left, you'll never get, that's Mike Epstein. And of course, in a much more unpolitical time, his nickname was the Super Jew. He was their first sacker, affectionately known as the Super Jew. You could do that in 1972. Doesn't this guy look like a lot of fun? See, doesn't he look like he cocktails? This is J.D. McCarthy and his buddy Hank Bauer. J.D. McCarthy lived in Detroit, and he shot postcards for players. Personal players would get autograph requests. They needed postcards to be able to send back to people. And they would hire guys like J.D. McCarthy to shoot pictures and have them printed up. And this is J.D. McCarthy, and this is what he did in like the 50s and 60s and early 70s. This is John Blue Moon Odom. Early Kansas City A's before they went to green and gold, just spring training. Classic. I mean, look at that. And it's not like they're going to drop out the background or anything. You know, that's going to be his postcard, I assume. Love this. This is Wayne Comer. Seattle Pilots, their 1 year, 1969, at Tiger Stadium. This is fabulous, this stuff. And this is all chrome. And Don Zimmer managing the Rangers. It's great stuff. This next set of pictures is by a good friend of mine who still lives in the Bay Area. God, he's been around a long time. Doug McWilliams. And Doug is the young man in the middle with the speed graphic. This is him at Seal Stadium. He won a contest to be on the field to shoot batting practice. The San Francisco Seals were the minor league team that played in San Francisco before the Giants moved there in 1958. So this is like 55, 56-ish, before he went off to college, and he wanted to be a photographer. And he ended up he started shooting postcards for guys, and he ended up having a long career working for Topps Chewing Gum in the Bay Area. Didn't do much action, did a lot of the beautiful pose stuff. This is him later in life, shooting Dick Williams, spring training in beautiful Yuma. This is Dick Williams when he was with the A's. Ernie Banks, spring training. Shot by Doug. I love this. Anyone know who this guy is?
Mickey Rivers.
Yeah. The very young, innocent Mickey Rivers before he came to New York. So this is like 72-ish, Oakland Coliseum, before a night game, batting practice, gorgeous light. I just could look at this all day. Also because I'm from the Bay Area, and this is before they built Mount Davis, and you can see the old bleachers and the ice plants and the old Arco sign, and it's beautiful. Dusty. This is 73-ish Candlestick by Doug McWilliams. Jerry Cook, Sports Illustrated. This is one of the great World Series moments when Bud Harrelson was called out at the plate in extra innings at Game 2 by Augie Donatelli, the great umpire, and Willie Mays got on his knees and pleaded with Augie, and Ray Fosse held up the ball. And this is the first World Series I ever really watched, and this was just a great, great picture by Jerry Cook from a great moment in the World Series. And it's Willie Mays, and Willie Mays retired at the end of the World Series. Harry Kabluck, Associated Press. He was the only photographer in the outfield. Game 6, 1975 World Series, Red Sox Reds, 1975, and he made the picture. Carlton Fisk trying to wave that ball fair at the bottom of the 12th inning. And there's a whole sequence. This is my favorite frame. And the great Johnny Iacono. I still remember getting the SI in the mail that week. This was the cover. Johnny was overhead, shooting chrome, and the quality is sketchy as all hell. It's unbelievable. But that's Will McEnany, the Reds closer, jumping into Johnny Bench's arms. The great Johnny I, and that was the cover that week from the incredible World Series. Does anyone know who this is? This is my dear friend, and good friends with many of us in the room, the great Michael Zagaris, Bay Area photographer, icon, legend, 1973, hanging out pregame in Oakland with his good buddy Orlando Cepeda. And there's not much you need to say other than, if you know Z, you really enjoy this picture. Because that's the Z-Man. Several years after Willie Davis slid into second base with Neil Leifer's camera in it, Z caught Willie smoking a cigarette in a dugout at Candlestick, which I just love. You don't see this anymore. Too bad. Z started shooting in the early 70s, and his stuff is just pretty awesome. It's Khalil DeRocher managing the Astros at Candlestick, 1973. Dick Allen, Oakland. Just love that. And this is Z. God, he had some great hair. 1976, with my all-time favorite giant when I was a kid, John the Count Montefusco. God, I loved the Count. And that's Z and the Count together. They used to party together and do a lot of crazy things together. Because you could do that back then. And, I mean, look at Z. That's awesome. Willie McCovey and Willie Stargell. This is 78 or 79, Candlestick. Love this. McCovey's last game as a Giant at Candlestick. I was at this game as a fan. I was in the upper deck in right field. This was July of 1980. Jack Clark's on third base. Ray Knight's playing third for the Reds. Joe Price is on the mound. You just can't see him. Thurman Munson posing for Z. Billy and Billy Jr. posing for Z. And this is Z, shot by Stan Javier of the A's. And if you can see the clock, it's 14 minutes before the earthquake, before Game 3 of the 1989 World Series in the A's clubhouse. It's 10 minutes to 5 on the clock, and the earthquake was at 5:04. This is pretty all-time. That's Ricky in the tub. He's got a lot of great pictures of Ricky. This was one of the pictures that he did of Canseco. This is when Canseco had Z shoot a series of pictures just to send to Madonna. And I'm not kidding. This is one of them. Our next photographer. Who's this guy?
Ron Modra.
A very young Ron Modra. Look how tight his pants are. Ron Modra, just one of my all-time favorite, great, incredible baseball photographers at SI, some other folks, and I mean, this guy can do anything and just shoot the hell out of it. Wonderful little portrait of George Brett and Rod Carew. Ron just came out with a wonderful book on all his life's baseball work a few months back. It's just got all his work in it. It's amazing. Anyone care to explain this picture?
Chicken man. Only ate chicken. Ah, he ate chicken before every game.
Yeah, Wade Boggs ate chicken before every game. It's a superstition. So this was for an SI story. And I don't know where they found this like chicken farm, but it's pretty cool. This is a famous Modra picture. Very famous Ron Modra picture. Cal Ripken and Mariano Rivera in Panama with some kids. When was this? Nate?
98 maybe?
Wow. That's a long time ago. Very cool.
Pretty sure 98.
Rich Pilling retired from Major League Baseball a few years back. Tug McGraw and the Phillies winning the 1980 World Series. And a beautiful picture of Ricky. I swear this is in the playoffs in the 1981 playoffs against the Yankees. Sliding into Greg Nettles, third base. Ricky was a big Mizuno guy back then. Love this picture. Okay, this is fun. Our next photographer grew up loving the Mets, shooting pictures of his beloved Mets and Dave Kingman from the stands with his dad's camera when he was 14 years old. Tom DiPace. How about that? This is Tom when he became a photographer in the early to mid 80s, when Carter became a Met. Tom is still shooting today. Tom is he's still a baseball freak, still shooting like crazy all over the place. In fact, he's coming in tomorrow. He's shooting the Mets the next 2 days over at Citi Field. And I had him send me some of his older stuff. Gary Carter, he was really close buddies with Gary Carter. Tom could shoot anything, but he did a lot of neat portraits of guys. Gary Carter, Mike Schmidt. You don't see a lot of Mike Schmidt stuff. Love this Griffey. This is young Griffey in the old bad uniform with the bad hat. It's really nice. And there's Tom this past spring training with Yadier Molina. With a Canon camera in his hand. How about that? He's one of those guys that's come back and forth. One of the all-time greats, dear friend of many of ours in the room, VJ Lovero, longtime Angels photographer, SI photographer, who passed away in January of 2004. Just the best there ever was. Just incredible guy, incredible photographer, incredible person. Taught us all so much about so many things. And this is him and Burke Lilac. VJ was a fun guy. And you always wanted to be, wherever VJ was, that's where you wanted to be, because that was the fun. Spring training, here in New York, whatever he was watching on TV, wherever he was going, that was the cool place to be. And Rod Carew, the great Hall of Famer, who's a photography buff, helped him get his job at the Angels right around 1982. And this is his picture in 1985 of Rod Carew getting his 3,000th hit. And of course, it's VJ squish ball on bat. And this legendarily kind of helped. This was his big moment at SI that got his foot in the door at the magazine. One of the great early VJ pictures. Early portrait of the great Dave Winfield for the Angels. VJ could do anything, absolutely anything. And everyone now knows that Randy Johnson is a photographer, but this was back way over 20 years ago. VJ went up to Seattle to do an SI feature on Randy Johnson, and that's a Canon F1 with a motor drive on a tripod, and it's a portrait of Randy with this Seattle skyline in the background. And just pretty classic VJ. VJ had really skinny legs. And he was tight with McGuire. This is mid-90s, Phoenix Municipal Stadium, spring training. VJ got along with all the players and did just so many great shoots with these guys. That's what the editors of the magazine knew that they could call on VJ to do wonderful feature stories with certain guys because they knew that the players would let him in and get just incredible results. This is VJ's picture of McGuire tying Maris, hitting number 61. He hit 62 at the night game the following night. This is one of VJ's last great covers. He shot this when he was sick. Just wonderful Giambi in the dugout in Anaheim before a game. Before or after a game, I forget, but it was just a great, great cover. And VJ was sick for a few years and had his ups and downs. And in 2002, the Angels won the World Series. And so many people were just thrilled for VJ. And he had had a good year in 2002, and he was looking good and feeling good and got to shoot the games. And our good friend Kevin Sullivan from the Orange County Register made this wonderful picture of Tim Salmon dousing VJ with champagne. It's just pretty great. Pretty great picture of VJ. Next up, we have Chuck Solomon, who's in the house. Chuck Solomon. One of the all-time greatest home plate collision pictures in the history of the world that's never allowed to happen again. So you'll be able to keep your title in perpetuity, in theory. And I remember this was 95-ish?
Just about.
And this was before leading off. This was when there was just the contents page. So that was, you try to get the contents page. That was like the place. And when you got your magazine with this picture of Kirk Gibson knocking over Pat Borders, it was like, holy shit, look at that. And Chuck, man, Chuck's an amazing photographer who shot baseball at SI and for other folks for a long, long time here in New York and all over the country, and just one of the all-time just great baseball photographers and lover of the game, and just a real inspiration to a lot of us. Just Chuck just nails it. And this is just one of the great, cool, quirky, just beautifully designed pictures of the great Omar Vizquel dropping a bunt in Cincinnati during an interleague game, and with the ball and the bat and the background and the light, and just I remember when this ran in the magazine. Just love this picture. And this, my God, Jesse Orozco throwing his glove in the air after Game 7. Mets beat the Red Sox Game 6, 86 World Series. Game 7, 86 World Series. And Chuck, you were that like inside first elevated? Slightly elevated?
Yeah, inside first elevated.
That slight elevated spot. And this picture, you know, it's film, it's chrome, and it looks like a painting.
People's hands up.
Yeah, the hands and I mean, this is did this run?
Yeah.
Good. That I don't remember, but this is a fabulous picture. Just a great moment. And Joe Carter's walk-off to win the 93 World Series against the Phillies. And Chuck, this is not a remote, Chuck is upstairs in the catwalk at the Sky Dome in Toronto. Shooting with what lens?
I think it was a 500. I'm not sure.
And just he's the only one up there. Pretty gosh darn cool. And next up, Rusty Kennedy, the great photographer out of Philadelphia for the AP, made the best frame of Kirk Gibson's home run Jube coming up the line. Rusty nailed it. Manual focus coming up the line. He was like one of the only guys shooting color. Just Rusty's the best. Fabulous picture. Robert Seal worked for the Sporting News for years out of Houston, now freelances. Does everything but does a lot of portrait work. Mariano Rivera. Pedro, going into the Hall of Fame this year. This is a sequence he did for Nate at the magazine a few years back, of Trevor Bauer. He was trying to do the Muybridge horse sequence thing. It was kind of cool. Evan Longoria. This was Altuve just this past year. Who's this guy?
Don't know.
Very young Rob Tringali and Ed Cranepool.
You already been shooting for 3 years? Yeah.
Shot by Mickey Palmer.
Yeah, so-
Because it's all connected. This is awesome. So what year is this?
76.
How great is that? That's
I
fabulous.
saw that t-shirt.
And then a few years later,
Style.
he's at Memorial Stadium in Baltimore. Frank Robinson doesn't look too happy that you're there. And look at those knee pads.
Now you're on the field. You're on the field. There's no photo boxes.
Rob is here in the New York City area, one of the just incredibly great photographers working today. Rob shoots everything. He can shoot everything. I've had the pleasure of doing the last couple of World Series with him, working for Major League Baseball. This guy is scary good. And I asked him to send me just some of his older baseball stuff. It's kind of fun to look at. And one of his all-time great pictures, he was there for the David Wells perfect game in 1999. And this is the final pitch. And of course, this is not a photo position. You're up there in the stands, probably getting yelled at. Or,
It hit, like, literally hit my credential and took a chance.
and
Like, Marie ended up calling me that day. She's Marie?
She left.
No, she left. Getting a phone call after that game.
McGuire, beautiful, beautiful portrait of McGuire. Well, this was after Clemens threw the bat, the broken bat. 2000, game one of the 2000 World Series at Piazza. It's a great picture. Ron Vesley is next. My good friend in Chicago, been shooting baseball forever. He's a White Sox team photographer. He's worked for the trading card companies, Major League Baseball, and he's been around forever. And he had the good fortune of shooting in the Midwest when the ballparks had great backgrounds and great light. And this is Carlton Fisk at Old Comiskey. Looked like a cool place to work. Young Frank Thomas in 1990. And you see the same archways in the background at Old Comiskey that we saw way back. Kirby Puckett, beautiful, God, beautiful. This is opening day in Milwaukee at Old County Stadium way back when. It's so pretty. And then this is a project he did for Donruss where they took players and put them in old throwback uniforms. George Brett, since the Kansas City Royals only started in 1969, they put them in old Kansas City Athletics uniforms. Which brings us back to this guy, shot by Charles Conlan. This is Swede Risberg, who was the shortstop of the 1919 Chicago White Sox. He was one of the Black Sox. In the movie 8 Men Out, he was a jerk, and there's one great quote where they like, yeah, Swede's a hard guy. And Swede Risberg is a direct blood relative descendant of one of my best friends in the Bay Area, Eric Risberg, who's been a photographer with the Associated Press for like 32 years now. And Eric is a great guy who's been making great pictures for a long, long time. And this is the AP darkroom in Oakland, a long, long time ago, where he's typing a caption, and he's got the game on the radio, and it's just pretty classic, the way it used to be in the 80s. I love this. He's in the clubhouse shooting Jack Clark, watching TV. I don't know why, but I love it. And this is old school Dodge, burn, bleach, black and white, put it on the wire, bad newsprint, 72-line screen, whatever. This is 1984 All-Star Game at Candlestick with Garvey coming in. This is classic, great, old school AP stuff. Tim Raids breaking up a double play. That's Dwayne Kuiper, the Giants, mid-'80s. Jose Uribe and Robbie Thompson colliding on an infield pop-up. This is a great moment. This is after Jack Clark hit the home run off of Tom Niedenfuhr in the 85 LCS to beat the Dodgers and after the final out. And Eric had the center field spot, and it ended up being great for the Jew. Tommy, love this. And now, so I'm the current guy. Now you got to look at some of my pictures. So, this is me. Grew up in the Bay Area. Been a Giants fan my whole life. So, like, I'm not a fraud. This is like a bad Sears portrait studio thing. This is like 1969, and I'm wearing a Giants hat. It's not photoshopped on. And as an Oriole, I tried pitching like John Montefusco. He was my hero when I played Little League. Brought my first camera, a Canon 81 program with a 50mm lens right there in a never-ready case. Anyone else buy a camera with a never-ready case who's old like me? Yeah. They don't do that anymore. And I went to On-Field Photo Day. I had my Jack Clark replica jersey on that I paid lots of money for. I got my hat, and I got my, I'm a junior in high school, and doesn't Jack look just pretty fired up to be there? I was a big Jack Clark fan. And now this is Will Clark. This is when I first started shooting. I was an intern at a newspaper, the Contra Costa Times, in 1987, and we shot chrome. So that was a fun way to learn. Bo Jackson breaking a bat over his knee in 1990. Don Zimmer, spring training, 1991. So when I was an intern, the Bash Brothers poster, they're posing for Zagaris. He was shooting the poster, and I was there for the newspaper, shooting chrome. And of course, when I left the paper, I took all my chrome with me, like a smart young photographer. And it's not all in my photo shelter archive. It's okay, because the paper's been bought and sold like 12 times. They don't know or care. Ricky Henderson, sliding in the third, setting the all-time stolen base record on May 1st, 1991. Slid in the third, and then he juked for us. It's pretty awesome. The great A's teams, the A's winning the World Series, 1989, the Earthquake Series, beating the Giants. I've shot a lot of World Series. I've shot the last 15 in a row for Major League Baseball. This is 2000, when the Yankees beat the Mets, Joe Torre being carried off. 2001, Game 7, Diamondbacks beating the Yankees. 04, Johnny Damon and the Red Sox. This is 08, Phillies beating Tampa Bay. 09, Jeter and the Yankees here in New York. 2010, my Giants miraculously made it to the World Series and played well. Freddie Sanchez making a great leaping catch in Game 4 in Texas. The Giants won that World Series. And then a couple years later, Game 2, they got Prince Fielder tagged out at home plate by Buster Posey. And at the end of Game 4, they had swept the Tigers in Detroit, and I focused on Marco Scutaro. Buster went crazy. And then the following year, 2013, the Red Sox won. And I was in a great, great spot and had this picture in my mind to go wide horizontal, look at the scoreboard and the whole thing. And it was really fun. And in the meantime, for Nate back here, I shot lots of Barry Bonds because he played in the Bay Area and he kept going after all these home run records. And even though everyone hated him and no one really cared, we had to cover him, and it was good because I got a lot of assignments, and then we would like run one picture, set up all these remotes and do all this stuff, but it was really fun. It was exciting, and I never really had to deal with him personally, so I never had to deal with him, so it was fun. It looks like he's posing for me, of course, but he's not. Just you shoot enough batting practice and you get lucky. This is the All-Star Game in Seattle, 2001, Home Run Derby. This is him setting the all-time record, passing Hank Aaron. Nate had supported me. We were always trying to do different stuff, and I'm like actually outside the stadium, shooting on my hands and knees, shooting with a 600 through the chain link fence. So there's no ad in the background, and I wanted the low angle and all this crap, and had to pray that the first baseman didn't slide over and block me, and then
You wanted to move. Remember that?
the night before I was blocked on all 4 at-bats. And this is where you gotta have there's a little lesson for all you photo editors out there. You need to support your photographers. And for all you photographers out there, you gotta be lucky and have good editors to support you. the night before, all 4 Bonds at bats, I was blocked because the Nationals first baseman, what's his face, kept drifting, and I was blocked all 4 at bats. And we had Robert back there with like 100 million remotes and Kojo, and we were covered. And I called you. I'm like, dude, what? And you just said, dude, who cares? Just stay there. And so I stayed there, and I made the picture that no one else has. And so you got to have a good editor to support you, because you want to try and get something different, because everyone else has a baseball card of a left-handed hitter swinging the bat, and nobody cares. Nobody wants that picture. And then, thanks to Kojo's help, we had my behind-the-plate remote, which was inspired by the Marvin Newman Mazeroski picture. This was a fun play-at-the-plate picture. I remember, like, Steve was texting me after this happened. Like, when you shoot a game and your director of photography is texting you, like, did you get that? It's like, I don't know, it sucked from my angle. Hopefully the remote got it. And so it did. That's always nice. Buster Posey. I love shooting Buster. Love shooting Buster. World Baseball Classic, San Francisco. We get a lot of birds sometime. Great A's team a couple years ago, just crazy winning streak down the stretch. Beat the Rangers in the last day to win the division. And it was just the craziest, wettest, drunken celebration ever. And then they went back on the field in the crazy light and posed for a team picture and went nuts. It was really a lot of fun. And in Oakland, we get to do dugout stuff that you can't do anywhere else in the country, because there's no fence, and we get away with murder, and the security guard likes us, and it's awesome. And you just sit there with a wide-angle lens and just have a lot of fun. In spring training, you can really do stuff like this. I just love this stuff. Like, never gets published, but I love shooting it. This is Yasiel Puig. And when the light's pretty, I love going out and shooting the light. This is last year. Kershaw, 6:05 game. Anytime you get a 6:05 game, you can have a little sliver on the mound in San Francisco. And it's always fun. The last out, the last pitch of Tim Lincecum's no-hitter last year. Nate always screams and yells because photographers never shoot the scoreboard behind the scene setter on a no-hitter. And so I always know to do that. And if you can, and it's always fun to do. One of the great moments, personally for me as a Giants fan last year in the playoffs, LCS Game 5. Bottom of the 8th inning, the Giants are down a run, and I'm in a special spot that I finagled at the Giants ballpark. I'm sitting with all the rich fans in the Lexus Club on a stool in an aisle where no one else can shoot from. And it's got this great angle, and you shoot wide. And Michael Morse hit this pinch hit home run to tie the game, and it was bedlam. And it was a great sequence of pictures. And it took all the pressure off for when Travis Ishikawa hit the walk-off home run, which I had nothing of, but I was working with the great Jed Jacobson, who was at first base. Jed had all that covered. This is World Series game from my spot, my secret little spot again. Madison Bumgarner, Game 5, we threw a complete game shutout. The Joe Panik flip from Game 7. I was not very happy. I got blocked terribly at the end of the game, and the Giants won. Jake Peavy going nuts. This is a picture from just a couple weeks ago. Mike Trout in Oakland. And I'm going to end it with a series of, I've been doing iPhone Instagrams since 2012, and Nate was very encouraging when I started doing this in spring training. I got my iPhone in 2011, right at the end of the year. Fell in love with Instagram, fell in love with shooting pictures of my phone, thought this would be, I love the whole social networking thing. Love shooting pictures of details of bats and balls and dugouts and stuff around the game. And I just love doing it, getting players to pose for me and stuff. And this is Bryce Harper. These are all shot with my iPhone. Different. This is my early iPhone. This is my 4S. Buster getting his gear on. This is R.A. Dickey's knuckleball grip. Shot this here in New York. This is SI ran, because of Nate's help and some other people, we got 6 pages, all 3 leading offs in the magazine in July of 2012. And then I got a book deal arranged with a publisher to do a book on all my pictures. And so I knew that was going, and I needed more good iPhone pictures. So the A's did this thing like a lot of teams. They did teams do Gatorade or whatever after walk-off wins. And so they would do a pie in the face. So the A's had won this game. They'd beaten the Yankees. And instead of shooting with my real camera, I just screwed it. I'm shooting with my phone. And this is before it had a motor drive setting. So screw it. I just shot there 1 frame. This is 1 frame. A Cocoa Crisp getting the pie in the face from Josh Reddick. But it was a great picture that I needed for the book. And I'm happy that I shot it with my phone. I started going to picture days at spring training and just grabbing guys and getting them to pose. This was last year. Ace catcher. This is Albert Pujols, Angels photo day. Sunset in Oakland. This is Cooperstown, the Hall of Fame Classic game that they have. It's coming up this Saturday. I'm going back to shoot it again this Saturday. It's a really amazing time. Mike Trout. The new now I use this was with the 6 Plus. I now use the 6 Plus. The quality's insane. It's just amazing what you can do. This is Odor, the great young Rangers rookie kid. In Oakland in late September, early October, in a special time between 5:30 and 6:30, depending on the day. The sun sets behind behind home plate, and it bounces off the luxury suite glass in center field and kicks in to the first base dugout for a fleeting couple of minutes. And you get this. There's the sun bouncing off the glass in center field, and it looks like you lit it. And it's awesome. I go in with the clubhouse and shoot my normal stuff and then bring my phone and try and make a phone picture. And this is Pablo after the first round when the Giants beat the Nationals. I waited for a long time and he lit up a victory cigar. Love this picture. It's Buster posing for me before one of the playoff games against the Cardinals, before batting practice. And after Ishikawa hit the walk-off, I waited for like an hour and a half. And I shot this with my real camera, but it was really great with the phone. Sent it out over Instagram. And it was a lot of fun for the whole social media thing. And then this year at spring training, went to photo days. This is like the sun rising at Mariners camp. Got guys to pose for me again. Jimmy Rollins. Nori Aoki, the Giants. Paul Goldschmidt. Justin Upton. These last couple, this is a guy who's become a friend of a lot of ours from spring training. This is Bill Miller, who's an umpire. He's a crew chief, and he's just a great guy and just a real knucklehead. And he's this is opening day in Oakland, and Z was out there shooting the crew, and I just went out there with my phone. I was out there for the meeting, the umpires, and everyone. I'm just there with my phone. It's very funny, and I'm shooting all these pictures, and he didn't see me. And then in the middle of the meeting, he just stops like, "Oh, hey, Brad, what's going on?" And I'm there with my phone. It's very bizarre. And so a few weeks ago, I was watching a game. He was doing a Giants game on a Friday night, and the Angels catcher just butchered a pitch, and it hit Bill in the left knee, and he went down like he'd been shot. It was very serious, very scary. And he ended up just the next day, he was okay, but he was still hurt. So I went to the umpire's room to see him the next day, and he had bandages all of ice on his knee. And his crew had put the tape outline on the floor. He's number 26, so they put his mask and his hat and his counter and put where his boo-boo was. And I said, "Oh my God, that is amazing. Can I shoot that and send it out?" They're like, "Oh yeah, that'd be great." And I put this out on Twitter and Instagram. And it went, they all kept getting it sent to them from people. It was very funny. And so this is the Instagram book I did a few years ago, Instant Baseball. It was a lot of fun. And after the Giants won the first World Series, did this book in 2000, after the 2010 season. After they won in 2012, we did this one. And my most recent book, Championship Blood, just came out a few months ago. after the Giants won again. And it's the list of people that have pictures here in this show. Lots of folks. And lots of different people have been super helpful. This is just, you know, I don't expect, this is not an end-all be-all history. This is something I've had fun. It's like an Easter egg hunt, and I keep trying to find more people, and it's a never-ending. I've spent like well over 100 hours on this thing trying to search and find people, and I'm going to give this show in Cooperstown on Friday, and then I will be back trying to find more stuff for the next time I do it, because it's really fun for me to try and find some more different photographers and expose them to people, because I think there's a lot of great work out there that's never been seen. So, any questions?
Thank you first.